Admiral Lee Taman stood at the window of his office and looked out at the stars. Earth's moon glowed softly in the distance, but his mind was far from peaceful. In 2 hours, he would attend another meeting with the Velthran Empire. These meetings always ended the same way, with humanity giving up more resources and getting nothing in return. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the galactic community for almost 200 years. When humans first built ships that could travel between stars, they thought they would find empty worlds waiting for them. Instead, they found the Velthran hegemony already controlling most of the galaxy. The Velthrans were not like humans. They stood 8 feet tall with gray skin that looked like stone. Their eyes glowed red, and their voices sounded like grinding metal. They had conquered over 400 star systems using weapons and ships that were far better than anything humans could build. To them, humans were useful workers, but terrible fighters. Taman remembered his first battle against Velthran ships 20 years ago. The human fleet had 50 vessels, all of them armed with the best weapons Earth could make. The Velthrans sent only 5 ships to meet them. Within an hour, 43 human ships were destroyed. The Velthrans lost nothing. That day, Taman learned that courage and determination meant nothing against superior technology. A soft chime. From his desk, computer interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral, your transport is ready," said his aide, Lieutenant Kim Do-young. The young officer tried to hide his nervousness, but Taman could see it in his eyes. Everyone knew today's meeting would be bad news for humanity. The transport ship carried Taman through space toward Nexus Prime, a massive space station that served as neutral ground for diplomatic meetings. As they flew, Taman reviewed the reports from human colonies. The Velthrans were demanding more tribute payments. Food, minerals, technology. They wanted it all, and they wanted twice as much as last year. Nexus Prime was bigger than most cities. Ships from dozens of different species docked at its ports, but everyone knew who really controlled the station. Velthran warships floated nearby like sleeping giants, their weapons pointed outward to remind visitors who held the power. Inside the station, Taman met with the other human diplomats. Ambassador Park Hyeri looked tired and defeated. She had been negotiating with aliens for 15 years and had very little to show for it. "They want to discuss the new tribute requirements," she said quietly. "Our analysts think they're going to double the payments again." Taman nodded grimly. Earth's colonies were already struggling to meet the current demands. Doubling them would mean starvation on some worlds and the complete shutdown of others. "Do we have any allies?" he asked. "The Kalari might support us, but they're too weak to matter. The Zephyrians are neutral as always. Everyone else is either conquered by the Velthrans or too scared to oppose them," Hyeri replied. The meeting room was cold and dark, designed to make non-Velthrans feel small and uncomfortable. Fleet Commander Zoltar entered first, his heavy footsteps echoing on the metal floor. Behind him came 2 other Velthran officers, their red eyes scanning the humans with obvious contempt. Zoltar was smaller than most Velthrans, but his reputation made up for his size. He had personally overseen the conquest of 17 star systems. Entire species had surrendered rather than face his fleets in battle. He looked at the humans the way a farmer might look at livestock. "Humans," Zoltar said, his voice like grinding stone. "Your tribute payments have been insufficient. The hegemony requires additional resources to maintain order in this sector." Ambassador Hyeri stood up slowly. "Commander, our colonies are already operating at maximum capacity. We cannot increase production without—" "Cannot?" Zoltar interrupted. His red eyes flared brighter. "The word cannot does not exist in your vocabulary when speaking to the hegemony. You will find a way, or we will find new workers to replace you." The threat was clear. The Velthrans had destroyed entire species before when they proved uncooperative. Taman felt his hands clench into fists under the table, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only make things worse. "What exactly are you demanding?" Hyeri asked. Zoltar activated a holographic display that showed lists of numbers. The amounts were staggering. Food shipments increased by 200%. Rare metals increased by 300%. Most shocking of all, they wanted human technology, specifically the quantum computers that Earth had developed for deep space navigation. "This is impossible," Hieri said. "These demands would bankrupt our colonies and leave Earth defenseless." Zoltar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Defenseless? Humans were never capable of defense. Your ships are toys. Your weapons are primitive. Your soldiers are cowards. He leaned forward, his red eyes boring into Yeri's face. "The only reason your species still exists is because you are useful workers. Do not test our patience by pretending to be warriors." Taman felt something hot and angry rising in his chest. He had lost too many good people to Velthran attacks to listen to this quietly. But before he could speak, Zoltar continued. "To ensure compliance, Velthran supervisors will be stationed on all major human worlds. They will oversee production and maintain order. Any resistance will be met with immediate punishment." The room fell silent. What Zoltar was describing was not tribute, it was occupation. Humanity would become slaves in their own homes. "We need time to consider," Hieri began. "You have one standard month," Zoltar cut her off. "Comply, or face the consequences. The hegemony has been generous with your species for too long. That generosity has limits." The Velthran officers left without another word, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Taman stared at the holographic display, memorizing every number and demand. His mind was already working, calculating what these requirements would mean for human civilization. On the transport back to Earth, nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Ambassador Hieri broke the silence. "We have to find another way," she said quietly. "We can't let our children grow up as slaves." Taman nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. For 20 years, he had accepted that humans were the weakest species in the galaxy. He had focused on survival instead of victory, on endurance instead of strength. But maybe it was time for a different approach. Back on Earth, Taman sat in his office and activated his secure communication system. He sent a coded message to Dr. Park Jiwon at the Lunar Research Station. The message was simple. "We need to talk, immediately." 3 hours later, Dr. Park's face appeared on his screen. She was younger than Taman expected, with intelligent eyes, and an expression that suggested she understood exactly why he was calling. "Admiral," she said, "I've been watching the news feeds from Nexus Prime. I assume this is about Project Nightfall?" Taman leaned forward. "Doctor, I need to know. Can it work?" Dr. Park was quiet for a moment, looking at something off-screen. When she turned back, her expression was serious but confident. "Admiral, I believe we can change everything, but it will be dangerous, and there's no guarantee of success. The Velthrons have given us 1 month before they occupy our worlds. We're out of safe options." Dr. Park nodded slowly. "Then yes, Admiral. Project Nightfall is ready for implementation. Give me the resources, and I'll give you a weapon that will make the Velthrons think twice about underestimating humanity." As the communication ended, Taman felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The galaxy was about to learn that humans could be much more dangerous than they appeared. 6 months had passed since the humiliating meeting at Nexus Prime. Deep in the asteroid belt, far from any shipping lanes or patrol routes, something impossible was taking shape inside a hollowed-out mining station called Echo Base. Captain Yoon Daeho floated in zero gravity, watching sparks fly from welding torches as workers assembled the final sections of humanity's greatest secret. The USS Blackstar didn't look like any ship ever built. Where normal vessels were long and sleek, the Blackstar was compact and angular, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "She's beautiful," said Engineer Kim So-young, floating beside him. Her voice carried a mixture of pride and terror. In her 20 years of building starships, she had never worked on anything like this. Daeho nodded, though his stomach was tight with worry. The Blackstar represented everything humanity had learned about physics, engineering, and warfare, combined with theoretical science that most experts said was impossible. If the ship worked, it would change the balance of power in the galaxy. If it failed, the explosion would probably destroy half the asteroid belt. "How long until the quantum drive is online?" he asked. Kim So-young checked her tablet. "Dr. Park thinks another week, maybe 2. The singularity generators are working perfectly, But we need to test the containment fields under full power. One mistake and... She didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what would happen. The shadow drive was Dr. Park Ji-won's masterpiece. Instead of pushing through space like normal engines, it folded space around the ship, allowing it to step from one location to another almost instantly. The physics were so complex that only 3 people in the solar system fully understood how it worked. Daeho kicked off from a support beam and glided toward the bridge. The Blackstar's command center was smaller than a normal warship's bridge, but every surface was covered with displays and controls that monitored systems no other ship possessed. At the center sat the captain's chair, connected to the ship's artificial intelligence by a direct neural link. "Good morning, Captain," said a pleasant female voice. The ship's AI had been nicknamed Echo by the crew, though officially it was designated as Tactical Intelligence System Mark 7. "Good morning, Echo. Status report?" "All systems are operating within normal parameters. The quantum singularity is stable at 94.7% efficiency. Weapons systems are offline pending final testing. The crew complement is at 187 of 200 authorized personnel." Daeho settled into his chair and activated the neural link. Immediately, he could feel the ship around him like an extension of his own body. He could sense the vibrations in the hull, the flow of energy through the quantum conduits, and the pulse of the contained singularity that powered everything. The sensation was overwhelming, at first. During his initial training sessions, he had passed out twice from the flood of information. But now, after months of practice, it felt natural. The ship was no longer just a machine he commanded. It was part of him. "Captain, we have visitors," announced Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho from the tactical station. His fingers danced over holographic displays showing the space around Echo Base. "3 ships approaching from the inner system. They're broadcasting Earth defense codes." Daeho felt his heart rate increase. Very few people knew about Project Nightfall, and fewer still knew the location of Echo Base. On screen, the main display showed 3 sleek vessels approaching the asteroid field. Daeho recognized them as the latest Earth Defense Force cruisers, the kind that were completely useless against Vielthron warships, but looked impressive in parades. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Lee Min-woo. "It's Admiral Taemin, sir." "Put him through." Admiral Taemin's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Behind him, Daeho could see the bridge of the EDF flagship Incheon. "Captain Yoon, we need to talk. Permission to come aboard?" "Of course, sir. Bay 2 is ready for your shuttle." 20 minutes later, Admiral Taemin floated through the Blackstar's corridors, his eyes wide with amazement. The ship's interior was unlike anything in the human fleet. Glowing conduits carried power to systems he didn't recognize, and the walls hummed with barely contained energy. They met in the ship's briefing room, where Dr. Park Ji-won was waiting with holographic displays showing the Blackstar's capabilities. Also present were Dr. Han Ji-soo, the ship's science officer and expert on alien biology, and the senior command staff. "Gentlemen, ladies," Admiral Taemin began, "the situation has changed. Our intelligence sources report that the Vielthrians are mobilizing additional fleets. They suspect we're planning something." Dr. Park looked concerned. "How much do they know?" "Not much, but enough to be worried. They've detected unusual energy signatures from this sector. Scout ships have been probing the asteroid belt for the past week." Captain Daeho felt Echo's presence in his mind, analyzing the tactical situation. "Admiral, the Blackstar isn't ready for combat operations. We need at least another month of testing." "We may not have another month," Taemin replied. "The Vielthrons have moved up their deadline. They're demanding compliance in 2 weeks, not 4. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. If the Vielthrons began their occupation of human worlds, Project Nightfall would become meaningless. The ship was designed to fight battles, not liberate conquered planets. Dr. Han Ji-soo spoke up. "Admiral, what if we could prove the ship works without engaging in a full battle? A demonstration that shows the Vielthrons we're not as helpless as they think." "What kind of demonstration?" asked Taemin. Dr. Park activated a star chart showing the local sector. "There's a Vielthran supply depot at Kepler 442. It's lightly defended, maybe 2 cruisers and some patrol ships. If the Blackstar could strike there and escape without losses, it would send a message. Engineer Kim So-young shook her head. The quantum drive hasn't been tested at combat ranges. We've only made short jumps within the solar system. The math is solid, Dr. Park insisted. The shadow drive should be able to transport us anywhere within 50 light years instantaneously. Should be? Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho raised an eyebrow. Captain, with respect, should be isn't good enough when we're talking about jumping into enemy territory. Daeho closed his eyes and consulted with Echo. The AI ran thousands of simulations in seconds, calculating probabilities and analyzing potential outcomes. The results were mixed. A 60% chance of complete success, a 30% chance of partial success with moderate damage, and a 10% chance of catastrophic failure. The AI thinks we can do it, Daeho said finally. But it's risky. Admiral Taman studied the star chart for a long moment. Captain, I won't order you to undertake this mission. The decision has to be yours and your crew's. Daeho looked around the room at his officers. These were the best people humanity had to offer. Brilliant scientists, skilled engineers, and experienced soldiers who had volunteered for a mission that might kill them all. Their faces showed fear, but also determination. Dr. Park, how long until the shadow drive is ready for a long-range jump? 72 hours, assuming no complications. Engineer Kim, can the weapons systems be brought online by then? The void cannons will be ready. I can't guarantee they'll work as designed, but they'll fire. Daeho made his decision. Admiral, we'll do it. But I want to choose the target myself, and I want complete operational freedom once we're deployed. Taman nodded. Agreed. What do you need? Time, privacy, and a promise that if this goes wrong, you'll continue the project with a new ship and crew. You have my word. After the meeting, Daeho floated alone on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. In 3 days, he would take the Blackstar into combat against an enemy that had never been defeated. The ship represented humanity's greatest achievement, but it was still untested in battle. Captain, Echo's voice spoke in his mind through the neural link. I have been analyzing Velthran combat tactics and ship designs. Their vessels are heavily armored but designed for conventional warfare. They will not expect weapons that manipulate space-time itself. Are you afraid, Echo? Daeho asked quietly. The AI paused, an unusually human response. I am not programmed to experience fear, Captain, but I am designed to calculate probabilities of mission failure, and those probabilities concern me. Daeho smiled despite his worry. Even their artificial intelligence was more human than most people realized. Echo, what's our best chance of success? Speed and surprise, Captain. The Velthrons have never faced an enemy that could appear anywhere without warning. If we strike quickly and retreat before they can respond, we should survive. And if something goes wrong, then, Captain, we will at least show them that humanity is more dangerous than they believed. Over the next 3 days, the Blackstar's crew worked around the clock to prepare for their first mission. Weapons were tested, systems were calibrated, and contingency plans were made. The ship's 200-person crew was the smallest of any major warship, but each person was a specialist in their field. On the morning of departure, Dr. Park Ji-won made her final checks on the quantum singularity that powered the shadow drive. The contained black hole was smaller than an atom, but contained the mass of a small moon. It was the most dangerous thing humans had ever created, and it was about to be their salvation. Shadow drive is ready, Captain, she reported. All quantum fields are stable. The news reached Admiral Taman at 0600 hours, Earth Standard Time. His aide, Lieutenant Kim Do-young, burst into his quarters with a face pale as morning frost. Sir, we've received word from New Busan. The colony is gone. Taman sat up in his bed, his mind still foggy from too little sleep. Gone? What do you mean, gone? Destroyed, sir. The Valthrans hit it 6 hours ago with a full battle group. 50,000 dead, maybe more. They're calling it territorial correction. The cold reality hit Taman like a physical blow. New Busan had been one of humanity's most successful colonies, home to families who had worked for generations to build something beautiful in the darkness of space. Now it was space dust and corpses. Get me a secure line to the Blackstar, he ordered, reaching for his uniform. And call an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. But when communications tried to reach Captain Yoon Deho's ship, they found only silence. The Blackstar was somewhere in deep space, conducting training exercises with their untested weapons. They had no idea that the war had already begun. The Defense Council meeting was grim. Holographic displays showed the wreckage of New Busan. Colony, twisted metal and frozen bodies floating in the void. The Violthran attack had been swift and merciless. No warnings, no demands for surrender, just pure destruction. This was a message, said Director Song Mina from Intelligence. They're showing us what happens when humans get ideas above their station. Or maybe they know about Project Nightfall, suggested General Kwon Jinho. This could be a preemptive strike. Admiral Taman studied the tactical reports. The attack force had been led by Fleet Commander Zoltar himself, using 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort vessels. It was massive overkill for a civilian colony, which meant the Velthrons wanted to make sure their message was heard across the galaxy. "What's the status of the Blackstar?" asked Director Song. "Unknown. Captain Yoon took the ship into the outer system for weapons testing. They're maintaining communication silence to avoid detection." "We need to recall them immediately," said General Kwon. "If the Velthrons are attacking our colonies, we need every ship we can get." Taman shook his head. "The Blackstar isn't ready for a full engagement. One untested ship against the entire Velthran fleet? It would be suicide." "Then what do you suggest, Admiral? We let them destroy our colonies one by one while we hide in the asteroid belt?" Before Taman could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Lieutenant Kim Do-young rushed in with another report. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. It's a Violthran battle fleet, at least 20 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts." The main display showed the approaching enemy formation. They were moving slowly and deliberately, clearly confident that nothing in the Sol system could threaten them. At their head was the massive flagship of Fleet Commander Zoltar, its hull decorated with the names of conquered worlds. "Time to Earth orbit?" Taman asked. 18 hours at current speed, sir." Taman felt the weight of command crushing down on him. Humanity's entire defense fleet consisted of 42 ships, most of them outdated cruisers and destroyers. Against 20 Violthran vessels, including dreadnoughts, they wouldn't last an hour. "Send the recall signal to all ships," he ordered. "Bring everyone back to Earth, and get me a priority transmission to the Blackstar. Tell Captain Yoon that the war has started." Meanwhile, 57 light-years away, the USS Blackstar floated in the emptiness between stars. The ship had successfully completed its first shadow drive jump, arriving in the Kepler 4042 system without being detected by Valthran sensors. Captain Yoon Dae-ho stood on the bridge, connected to the ship's AI through the neural link. Through Echo's sensors, he could see the Valthran supply depot orbiting the system's 4th planet. It was exactly as intelligence had described: 2 cruisers, 4 patrol ships, and a massive cargo station filled with weapons and supplies. "Target analysis complete," reported Dr. Han Ji-soo from the science station. "The depot contains enough military supplies to outfit a full battle group. If we destroy it, we'll seriously disrupt Valthran operations in this sector." Lieutenant Commander Choi Min-ho studied the tactical display. "The defending ships are in standard patrol formation. They're not expecting trouble." "Good," said Dae-ho. "Engineer Kim, status on the void cannons?" Kim So-young checked her displays with nervous fingers. "All quantum field generators are online. Singularity projectors are charged and ready. Captain, I have to warn you, we've never fired these weapons at full power before. Will they work?" "According to the simulations, yes. But simulations aren't reality." Dae-ho closed his eyes and consulted with Echo. The AI had run countless battle scenarios, analyzing every possible outcome. The plan was simple. Appear next to the depot, destroy it with the void cannons, eliminate any defending ships, then escape using the shadow drive before reinforcements could arrive. "All stations, prepare for combat," he announced. "This is what we trained for." The Blackstar's crew moved with practiced efficiency, even though none of them had ever been in a real space battle. Dr. Park Ji-won monitored the quantum singularity that powered their weapons. Engineer Kim So-young watched the containment fields that kept the ship from tearing itself apart. Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho coordinated targeting systems that could bend space and time. Shadow drive ready, reported Dr. Park. We can jump to attack position on your command. Daeho took a deep breath. Once they attacked the depot, there would be no going back. Humanity would officially be at war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Execute jump. Take us in. Reality twisted around the Blackstar as it slipped through folded space. One moment they were drifting in empty space, the next they were less than 1,000 kilometers from the Vilethron depot. Alarms immediately began sounding on the enemy vessels as their sensors detected the sudden appearance of an unknown ship. Void cannons, fire, ordered Daeho. The Blackstar's weapons were unlike anything that had ever existed. Instead of plasma bolts or missiles, they fired controlled gravitational distortions, tiny black holes that lasted only seconds but could tear apart anything in their path. The first void cannon blast struck the supply depot's main section. The station's shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, were completely useless against an attack that warped space itself. The blast created a gravity well that stretched the station's hull like taffy before tearing it apart at the molecular level. Direct hit, reported Choi Minho. The depot is breaking apart. The Vilethron cruisers were finally responding, turning toward the Blackstar and charging their weapons. But they moved like ships in a nightmare, too slow and clumsy to deal with. An enemy that could appear and disappear at will. Incoming transmission from the lead cruiser, announced Communications Officer Lee Minwoo. They're demanding we identify ourselves. Tell them, Daeho said grimly, that humanity sends its regards. The second void cannon fired, catching one of the cruisers as it tried to maneuver. The gravitational distortion hit the ship's engineering section, and the entire vessel folded in on itself like a crushed tin can. 300 Vilethron warriors died in seconds, their bodies compressed into a space smaller than a basketball. The remaining cruiser and patrol ships opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts and fusion missiles filled the space around the Blackstar, but the human ship was already moving. Using short-range shadow drive jumps, it appeared and disappeared around the battlefield like a ghost. Their weapons can't lock on to us, observed Dr. Han Jisu. The shadow drive is disrupting their targeting systems. Good. Continue firing. The battle lasted only 12 minutes. When it was over, the Vilethron supply depot was a cloud of expanding debris, and every enemy ship was either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The Blackstar had suffered no damage at all. Shadow drive ready for departure, reported Dr. Park. Should we return to Earth? Before Daeho could answer, long-range communications picked up an emergency signal. It was Admiral Taemin's recall message, transmitted on all frequencies with maximum priority encoding. Captain, you need to see this, said Lee Minwoo, his face pale. The message was brief, but devastating. New Busan destroyed. Vilethron fleet approaching Earth. All ships recalled immediately. The war they had been preparing for had started while they were 50 light-years away. Daeho felt anger rise in his chest like fire. While he had been conducting careful strikes against supply depots, the Vilethrons had murdered 50,000 human civilians, men, women, and children who had never done anything except try to build a better life among the stars. Plot a course. For Earth, he ordered. Maximum speed. Captain, said Dr. Park, the shadow drive needs time to recharge after the battle. We can't make a long-range jump for at least 6 hours. Then we use conventional propulsion. I don't care if we burn. Out every engine on the ship. We're going home. As the Blackstar raced toward Earth at maximum acceleration, news of the battle spread through both human and Vilethron space. For the first time in over 3 centuries, someone had destroyed a Vilethron military installation without losing a single ship. The impossible had happened. On the Vilethron homeworld, Overlord Vexthara received the news in her throne room. The ancient ruler had conquered dozens of species and commanded fleets that could. The news of the Kepler 442 attack spread through the Vilethron Empire like wildfire. On the bridge of his flagship, Fleet Commander Zoltar studied the reports with growing disbelief. An entire supply depot destroyed. 2 cruisers obliterated. All by a single human ship that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Show me the sensor recordings again, he ordered his aide. The holographic display replayed the battle from multiple angles. One moment, space around the depot was empty. The next, a dark ship materialized and began firing weapons that bent space itself. The Vilethron vessels tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't even hit the mysterious attacker. "How is this possible?" Zoltar muttered. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. The human ship moved through space like it was stepping between dimensions. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving priority orders from Overlord Vexithera." The message was brief and direct. "Find the human ship. Destroy it. Use any means necessary." The Empire's reputation was at stake. Zoltar smiled grimly. The humans had managed one surprise attack against a lightly defended target. They would not be so fortunate when they face the full might of the Vaelthran military. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "All ships are to begin systematic patrols of human space. This phantom ship will show itself eventually, and when it does, we will be ready." But the USS Blackstar was not hiding. It was racing toward Earth at maximum speed, its engines pushed beyond safe limits as Captain Yoon Dae-ho tried to reach home before the Vaelthran fleet arrived. The ship shook with each pulse of the quantum drive, and warning lights flashed across the engineering displays. "Captain, we're pushing the engines too hard," warned Engineer Kim So-young. "If we keep this up, we risk a core breach." "How long? Until we reach Earth?" Dae-ho asked through gritted teeth. "At current speed, 6 hours and 42 minutes. Dr. Park Ji-won looked up from her console. "The shadow drive will be recharged in 4 hours. We could make the jump then." "Do it," Dae-ho ordered. "The moment we can jump, we go." Meanwhile, the Vaelthran fleet was already entering the outer edges of the Sol system. 23 warships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. At their head flew Zoltar's flagship, the Devastator, a massive dreadnought that had never been defeated in battle. On Earth, Admiral Taman watched the approaching enemy fleet with a heavy heart. Humanity's entire defense force was spread out, in a thin line between the Vaelthrons and Earth. 42 ships against 23 didn't sound like terrible odds, until you considered that a single Vaelthron cruiser could destroy 3 human vessels without taking damage. "Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy flagship," reported Communications Officer Park Hyun. "Put it through." Fleet Commander Zoltar's face appeared on the main screen, his red eyes glowing with satisfaction. "Admiral Taman, I believe we have met before. At Nexus Prime, was it not?" "What do you want, Zoltar?" Taman asked coldly. "What I want is simple. Surrender your secret weapon, and I will allow your species to continue existing as laborers for the Empire. Refuse, and I will turn every human world into space dust." "We don't know what you're talking about," Zoltar laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Do not insult my intelligence, Admiral. A human ship attacked our depot at Kepler 442, the same ship that has been conducting raids against our supply lines for the past month." "Where is it?" Taman felt his stomach clench. A month of raids? The Blackstar had only conducted one mission. Unless... "I can see the confusion in your eyes," Zoltar continued. "Yes, Admiral. Your miracle ship has been quite busy. 7 attacks in 4 weeks, 18 of our vessels destroyed. It seems your species has finally grown some teeth." The transmission ended, leaving Taman staring at a blank screen. 7 attacks? How is that possible? The Blackstar had left for its first mission only days ago. "Sir," said his aide Lieutenant Kim Do-young, "I'm receiving reports from our intelligence network. There have been multiple attacks on Vaelthran installations across the sector. The aliens think it's all the same ship." Taman realized what had happened. Other species in the galaxy, seeing humanity's successful strike, had begun their own resistance movements. The Kalari, the Zephyrians, even some conquered Vaelthran worlds were rising up. The attack on Kepler 442 had been the spark that lit a galactic rebellion, but that also meant humanity would bear the blame for everything that followed. "Time until the enemy fleet reaches Earth?" he asked. 14 hours at current speed. Signal all ships. Prepare for battle." Light years away, Captain Dae-ho felt the Blackstar's shadow drive finish charging. The quantum field stabilized, and Dr. Park Ji-won gave him the signal he'd been waiting for. "Shadow drive ready, Captain. We can jump to Earth immediately." "Do it." Reality twisted around them as the ship folded space. The journey that should have taken hours was completed in seconds. The Blackstar emerged from its dimensional jump at the edge of Earth's solar system, its sensors immediately detecting the approaching Velthran fleet. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho. "Look at the size of that formation." The enemy fleet was massive, more ships than Daeho had ever seen in one place. Each vessel was larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human fleet. The flagship alone was bigger than Earth's largest space station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Taemin," reported Communications Officer Lee Minwoo. The Admiral's face appeared on screen, relief visible in his eyes. "Captain Yoon, thank God you're here. We need to talk immediately. 20 minutes later, Daeho was aboard the Admiral's flagship, listening to a briefing that made his blood run cold. The Velthrons weren't just angry about one attack. They thought humanity was behind a galaxy-wide rebellion. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were fighting back, inspired by what they thought was humanity's secret weapon. "They want our surrender," Taemin explained. "Complete submission plus the technology behind the shadow drive. And if we refuse, they'll destroy every human world in the galaxy." Daeho looked at the tactical displays showing the vast enemy fleet. Even with the Blackstar's advanced weapons, the odds were hopeless. One ship against 23, including 2 dreadnoughts that could probably survive a direct hit from the void cannons. "Admiral, there might be another way," he said slowly. "The Blackstar's shadow drive doesn't just allow us to move through space. It can manipulate space-time in other ways, too." "What do you mean?" "Dr. Park has been working on something she calls the Cascade Protocol. Instead of firing individual void cannon shots, we could link all our weapons together and create a chain reaction of gravitational distortions." Admiral Taemin leaned forward. "What would that do?" "In theory, it would create a gravity wave that could affect multiple targets simultaneously." But Daeho hesitated. "But what?" "But the power requirements would be enormous. We'd have to channel the ship's entire quantum singularity through the weapons. If it doesn't work perfectly, the Blackstar would be torn apart." Taemin was quiet for a long moment. "What are the chances of success?" "Dr. Park estimates 60%. Maybe 70 if everything goes right. And the chances of stopping the Velthran fleet with conventional weapons? 0. The Admiral nodded grimly. "Then we try your Cascade Protocol. How long do you need to prepare?" 6 hours to modify the weapon systems. "But Admiral, there's something else. If this works, it's going to change everything. The other species in the galaxy will see that the Velthrons can be defeated. There'll be rebellions everywhere." "Good," Taemin said firmly. "It's about time someone stood up to these bullies." As Daeho returned to the Blackstar, he found his crew already preparing for what they all knew would be their final battle. Dr. Park Ji-won was working feverishly to modify the void cannon systems, connecting them to the ship's quantum core in ways they were never designed for. "How does it look, Doctor?" he asked. "Terrifying," she admitted. "We're essentially turning the ship into a weapon of mass destruction. If the containment fields fail even for a microsecond, we all get compressed into the size of a marble? More? Like the size of an atom." Engineer Kim So-young looked up from her console. "Captain, I've been running diagnostics on all systems. The ship can handle the power load, but only for a few seconds. After that, we either succeed or we die." Dr. Han Ji-soo had been analyzing the Velthran fleet composition. "Captain, I've identified their flagship and command vessels. If we can take out their leadership, the rest of the fleet might withdraw. Or they might get angry and turn Earth into an asteroid field," observed Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho. "That's a risk we'll have to take," Daeho said. "How much longer until the modifications are complete?" 4 hours, replied Dr. Park. "Maybe 5 if we want to do it safely." "We don't have 5 hours. The Velthran fleet will be in weapons range in 6 hours. We need to hit them before they can threaten Earth directly." As the crew worked, Captain Daeho sat in his command chair and activated the neural link with Echo. The ship's AI was unusually quiet, running constant calculations on their chances of survival. "Echo, what do you think? Can we pull this off?" "Captain, the mathematics are sound, but there are too many variables to calculate precisely. What I can tell you is that if we fail, the explosion will. The USS Blackstar materialized in the middle of the Vilethron fleet like a shadow coming to life. One moment, the space around Fleet Commander Zoltar's flagship was empty. The next, a dark human vessel appeared between his dreadnoughts. Its weapons already charging with deadly energy. "All ships open fire!" Zoltar screamed into his communication system. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were too late. Captain Yoon Daeho sat in his command chair, connected to the ship's systems through the neural link. He could feel every weapon, every shield, every pulse of the quantum singularity that powered their impossible technology. Around him, his crew worked with calm precision, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of humanity. "Cascade protocol is ready," announced Dr. Park Ji-won from her station. Her voice was steady, but Daeho could see the fear in her eyes. They were about to unleash forces that could tear apart space itself. "Void cannons locked on target," reported Lieutenant Commander Choi Min-ho. His tactical display showed firing. Solutions for 6 different enemy ships, including Zoltar's flagship. "Fire," Daeho ordered. The Blackstar's weapons fired as one, but instead of separate shots, they created a web of gravitational distortions that spread through the enemy formation like lightning. The Cascade protocol linked each blast to the next, creating a chain reaction of space-time distortions that no conventional defense could stop. The first Valthran cruiser caught in the Cascade simply ceased to exist. The gravitational forces compressed its hull into a point smaller than a pinhead before the distortion moved on to the next target. The second ship tried to raise its shields, but the Cascade passed through them as if they weren't there. Energy. Barriers meant nothing to an attack that warped the fabric of reality itself. Fleet Commander Zoltar watched in horror as 6 of his ships disappeared in as many seconds. "What kind of weapon is this?" he shouted at his science officer. "Unknown. Sir, our sensors can't even measure what they're doing to local space-time." The Devastator's massive guns finally opened fire, sending plasma bolts the size of buildings toward the Blackstar. But the human ship was already moving, using short-range shadow drive jumps to appear and disappear around the battlefield, like a ghost. "They're not just faster than us," observed Navigation Officer Kethron. "They're moving through dimensions we can't even detect." On the Blackstar's bridge, engineer Kim So-young monitored the ship's quantum core as it channeled unimaginable energies through the weapon systems. "Captain, the singularity is destabilizing. We can't maintain this level of output much longer." "How much time do we have?" Daeho asked. "Maybe 2 more cascades before the containment fields fail." Daeho looked at the tactical display. The Vilethron. Fleet was in chaos, with ships scattering in all directions as they tried to avoid the gravitational distortions. But there were still 17 enemy vessels left, including both dreadnoughts. "Target the flagship," he ordered. "If we can take out Zoltar, the rest might surrender." The second cascade tore through space toward the Devastator, but Zoltar had learned from watching his other ships die. At the last second, he activated his ship's emergency jump drive, vanishing into hyperspace just as the gravitational wave passed through the space where he had been. "Clever," muttered Dr. Han Jisoo. "He's using hyperspace to avoid our weapons." "Can we follow him?" asked Daeho. "Not with the shadow drive," replied Dr. Park. "Our technology works differently than their jump drives." The remaining Valthran ships were trying to retreat, but the Blackstar was too fast. Using its shadow drive, it appeared next to each fleeing vessel and eliminated them one by one. The battle that should have been humanity's last stand was turning into a rout. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the second dreadnought," warned Choi Min-ho. "They're charging their planet killer cannon." Daeho's blood turned to ice. The planet killer was a weapon designed to crack worlds, powerful enough to destroy Earth's moon with a single shot. If they fired it at Earth... "Shadow drive to intercept course," he ordered. "Emergency speed." The Blackstar appeared directly in front of the dreadnought's main gun, just as it fired. The planet killer beams struck the ship's forward shields with the force of a dying star. Alarms screamed across the bridge as the shields overloaded and failed. "Hull breach on deck 7 through 12, shouted Kim So-young. "We're losing life support." "Emergency force fields activated," reported the ship's AI. "But the damage is severe." Daeho felt the ship's pain through the neural link like a physical wound. The Blackstar was hurt, but it was still fighting. One more cascade, he said grimly. We end this now. Captain, the quantum core is critical, Dr. Park warned. If we fire again, the ship will tear itself apart. If we don't fire, Earth dies. Dr. Park nodded and began the final charging sequence. The ship's quantum singularity pulsed with barely contained energy as the void cannons prepared for their last shot. Around them, the surviving Vielthran ships were closing in, sensing that their enemy was wounded. All weapons, fire! The final cascade erupted from the Blackstar with the fury of a collapsing star. The gravitational waves swept through the remaining enemy ships, tearing them apart at the atomic level. Even the massive dreadnought, with armor thick enough to stop nuclear weapons, was crushed like an empty can. But the effort was too much for the Blackstar. The ship's quantum core finally lost containment, and the artificial black hole that powered their weapons began to collapse inward on itself. Abandon ship, Daeho ordered, but his crew shook their heads. We're not leaving you, Captain, said Kim So-young firmly. The escape pods would never reach safety anyway, added Dr. Park. If we're going to die, we die together. Daeho felt a surge of pride in his people. Even facing certain death, they stood at their posts. But then Echo spoke in his mind through the neural link. Captain, I may have a solution. If I can redirect the collapsing singularity through the shadow drive, I might be able to create a stable wormhole back to Earth. What about you, Echo? I will not survive the process, Captain, but the crew will reach home safely. Before Daeho could respond, the ship's AI began the sequence. The collapsing quantum singularity was channeled through the shadow drive generators, creating a tunnel through space-time that led directly to Earth orbit. Everyone to the escape pods, Daeho ordered. Now! As the crew evacuated, Daeho remained on the bridge with Echo, watching the ship that had become humanity's salvation tear itself apart. Through the neural link, he could feel the AI's satisfaction at having saved her crew, even at the cost of her own existence. Thank you, Echo, he said softly. It has been an honor serving with you, Captain Yoon Daeho. The bridge dissolved around him as the wormhole pulled the escape pods toward Earth, leaving the USS Blackstar to die alone in the darkness between stars. 3 hours later, Captain Daeho and his crew were aboard Admiral Taemin's flagship, watching the news feeds from across the galaxy. The destruction of the Vielthran fleet had been seen by thousands of ships from dozens of species. Word was spreading that the mighty Empire could be defeated. Reports are coming in from everywhere, said Communications Officer Lee Minwoo. The Kalari have declared independence. The Zephyrians are mobilizing their fleets. Even some Vielthran colonies are rebelling. Admiral Taemin smiled for the first time in months. How long until we can build another Blackstar? Dr. Park Ji-won looked up from her reports. 6 months, maybe 8. But Admiral, I don't think we'll need to. Half the galaxy is in revolt. The Vielthran Empire is collapsing. On the enemy homeworld, Overlord Vexithara sat on her throne and listened to reports of defeat after defeat. In a single day, she had lost her most powerful fleet and seen her empire begin to crumble. For the first time in 3 centuries, other species were not afraid of the Vielthrans. What are your orders, Overlord? Asked her chief advisor. Vexithara stared at the tactical displays showing rebel fleets advancing on multiple fronts. The humans had shown the galaxy that the Empire could bleed, and now everyone wanted to see it die. Send a message to the human. Homeworld, she said finally. Request a meeting. It seems we have much to discuss. 6 months later, Captain Yoon Daeho stood on the observation deck of the new USS Blackstar II, looking out at the stars. The ship was larger than the original, with improved weapons and better shields. More importantly, it was not alone. Floating nearby were the UES Freedom and the UES Defiance, the second and third ships of humanity's new Blackstar class. The galaxy had changed dramatically since that day in Earth orbit. The Vielthran Empire still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Most of their conquered territories had declared independence, forming a loose alliance under human protection. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Empire for centuries were now open to all species. Captain, said his new first officer, Commander Lee Yoonji, we're receiving a transmission from the Kalari delegation. They're ready to sign the Mutual Defense Treaty. Daeho nodded. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but it was no longer dominated by fear. Species that had been enemies for generations were learning to work together. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what had come before. "Send our reply," he said. "Tell them that humanity is honored to stand with them." As the stars wheeled overhead, Daiho thought about Echo and the